We're going to show you some easy tricks to do really neat artwork on black t-shirts, either with or without an airbrush. The standard airbrush theory for t-shirts often is that you can only really paint on white or light colored t-shirts, or that to paint on black tees you have to use special super opaque white airbrush paints that really don't work worth a darn. They have to be put on very thick and you end up with fuzzy artwork with the thick caking of paint that just won't last very long. The stuff we're going to do here is really helpful, really easy to do, really effective, and really inexpensive to do as well. And it's very helpful, of course, for Halloween art and scary stuff in general, like skulls and so forth, that don't look good on white or baby blue t-shirts. But also, this will work for doing band t-shirts, bar logos, events, whatever. All the stuff we do here can be done with or without an airbrush. We'll show you some other things you can do that involve coloring. And of course, it can also be done on white t-shirts using paint as well, or light colored t-shirts, but we're going to focus on showing you this on black tees and the technique for doing that in particular, just for Halloween and so forth. Okay, I've printed off a stencil image, and there's a bunch of these skulls and a whole lot of other stuff on my website. You can find them anywhere. You can draw your own. Printed this off on inkjet glossy photo paper. That's going to be pretty resilient to anything we're going to use on here, but to help make it more resilient and keep from getting any sort of bleed and blurb around the edges, keep it a sharp image, I'm going to coat it with some clear rattle can paint first, and that's going to make it work a lot better for it. Okay, when we cut this out with an X-Acto knife, there's different ways to cut and use any of these stencils depending on the exact image you want to do and how you want to do it. You'll see that as we go along. You can also print directly onto plastic, which is a neat way to go, and that's with the transparency sheets that are printable on inkjet. Once you print them, you do want to seal those also with the clear so the inkjet film doesn't run. Then we're going to use Easy Tack or another repositionable adhesive. This is the same type of adhesive you'd find on Post-it notes, so it works great. It's a low tack adhesive. You can usually find that at office supply stores and hobby stores. Okay, and then we're just going to place that on our t-shirt. Now inside the t-shirt is a piece of cardboard. You always want something inside of the t-shirt so that what we're going to use here, whether it's paint or whatever, will not soak through to the next side. Then I'm going to use this clear tape to mask off the area around here, just so that maybe you can kind of get an idea, in this case, of a comparison between this image area we're going to shoot and the black t-shirt, kind of so you can see that contrast as we go here. So then what we're going to come in here with is bleach. We're going to use the airbrush first in this example, and we want to spray this, kind of spraying it from the side. We're not directly over the image area, just lightly misting the bleach on there. And this will, want a light misting so it doesn't load up that cloth and then bleed out or blurb out your image. You want a nice sharp image. So if you have to go in and do this multiple times, depending on what you're doing, that's fine. Always clean out the airbrush, dump the bleach out of there and clean it out. Don't leave the bleach in there between spraying, or the bleach, being acidic, will start to eat away at the needle and so forth. And you can guess how I figured that out. So clean it out real good. Don't leave the bleach sit in there. If you are using the airbrush, I'll show you another variation without the airbrush here in a moment. So depending on what you want to do, you get first to a reddish color, and then if you do repeated applications, you get all the way down eventually past this to a brownish gray color, pretty light, pretty pale, not white, but fairly pale. So depending on what you want to do, you can stop at different levels, and we'll show you some different things here on this first project. We're going to come back in and build this back up and show you some other things to do on here in terms of painting a full skull. This isn't going to be highly detailed, but it's kind of neat to see how to do it just as an example. Then just come in and stencil off and finish up your artwork. Now to do the eyes and nose, I could have just left those black by having kept the spaces there, blanks for the eyes and nose and so forth, and just remained with the original black that was underneath there. That's another way to have done this. I just wanted to experiment and see how well the black paint would go on top of the white here on top of that pale once we got it bleached. So this was just kind of a little experiment I did, and this went pretty well. Okay, not a very fancy detailed skull, but you could detail it as much as you want. This just shows you the basics and that it does work. Now, this is another idea that Ronnie Devers up in the Quad Cities had. What she did here was she made the stencil for the central logo there for Cousins Tap, and then instead of using bleach or the stupid white airbrushing paint that really does not work very well on black at all, what she did was she went in here with white silkscreen ink and just dabbed it in there. So without actually silk screening it, she used silkscreen ink, which we've always thought you could do, and sure enough, you can. It works great. And I think she did a couple of applications and just dabbed it in then with a towel. Of course, you could use a sponge or something. And the silkscreen ink comes in different colors. She said she even used a real cheap silkscreen ink that she got at Hobby Lobby, but it worked fine. She thinks a better ink would work even better. So this is another approach, another idea. And then she painted in the fire then separately around that as well. But the basic part there where she got the opaque image. And then that silkscreen ink isn't heavy. It's not. It goes down into the fiber. It's just very opaque. So it's really the perfect way to do this if you're going to apply anything like that. So there's the bleach and there's this. This gets you to get to a different place in terms of what you can do from here and so forth. But a couple different ways to skin the cat there, and we'll show you a couple more things here. Okay, so this is a different skull, a larger version of that skull without the crossbones that I've gone and done. And then I'm going to do flames down here. I'm going to do the real fire, and I'm using bleach to do that. So it's just the standard method of doing real fire on my videos and so forth. But here I'm using bleach, and I'd also recommend maybe using a watered down bleach so you get more control and so forth just to lay in the fire. See how it comes out an orangish red, and then of course you can always come in with paints or dyes or whatever and enhance that coloration as well. So you can do fire using bleach, and that's a real neat thing to be able to add custom real fire or true fire doing this to a black t-shirt. Okay, now let's do some pieces that don't require an airbrush, and I think you're going to come out with some really neat stuff here. I'll explain a little bit as I go along here. But what I'm going to do here first, make a fairly intricate, neat-looking Halloween piece. I'm going to take this as a picture of Boris Karloff as Frankenstein from the 1931 classic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to a straight black and white image. You can kind of see part of that on the left there. And then I'm going to make a stencil based on that. So we have a monochrome of that. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt really quick, simple, and without even needing an airbrush. Okay, so to convert that, I just go into Photoshop, and I'm just going to simplify the image down to 2 colors, and then you can play around, and you can draw in your cutouts and so forth. You can change whatever you want just in Photoshop and so forth. Can't get into a really big tutorial on that, but basically you're making a monochrome image, just black and white, and it has a really neat effect. I think it's a really neat effect for a monster, a really scary monster like this. And this is the inversion of that, so that what I'm going to be cutting out are these dark areas, and that's where I'm going to bleach, hit it with bleach, and I'm going to lighten that up. I'm not going to print it off as black and white, but it really is gray and white. I'm not going to waste a lot of black ink that way. Okay, so I use the Easy Tack here, and what I've done is take me about an hour to cut that stencil out. You see I've left gaps where it doesn't connect. That way it stays together as one piece. So it's not, everything isn't exactly. They're just kind of chosen where to leave some gaps. Spray some Easy Tack on there, and you see I've put a buffer zone of tape around the edge, coming around the front and the back, so that it just creates a plastic buffer zone coming out around there to diminish the overspray effect. Okay, so I'm going to put this on this shirt and then just come in with this perfume bottle, and that I use that instead of the larger spray bottle because you're going to get a finer mist with it, and that's going to give you a more even, fine coverage. And then of course pushing this down, make sure I've got good contact with that stencil everywhere with that repositionable adhesive so that I've got a good, nice, clean image that I'm going to get a nice sharp image on those edges. And you can see I've cut the stencil, like I said, where I've just left spaces where I've needed to. And then just, you want to come from the side again. Here I'm coming from down below or whatever, but just don't get right above it. Or rather, if you do get right above it, understand you can get a droplet effect from some bigger droplets. And that might look cool if you want that on your Frankenstein or some other piece. Okay, so one or two treatments and you get to this red image. It's really neat. Probably just one misting will do that, and tamp off the excess after it sits for a few seconds so you don't get a lot of runoff. Again, always be sure there's an insert of some sort, plastic or cardboard, inside the shirt when you do these, no matter what. And then you could also do multiple treatments and take this down to the pale level, like we did originally on the other, on the skulls and so forth. And then you'd have the option then of colorizing it green or whatever. And then also you can do different variegations, including the droplet effect I talked about there a second ago, getting excess droplets in there to get kind of a grotesque speckled look, or different gradient variations and so forth. If that's what you want to go for, just think about a lot of ways to skin this cat. Okay, here we'll do this one without an airbrush at all. This will be a jack-o'-lantern piece, and it'll be a really scary one. And we're going to do some color effects and everything too, again without an airbrush. I'm going to use a mister bottle, and the one I'm going to use is a small perfume type bottle to create a finer mist that's going to be better for doing any of this. If you want more of a droplet effect, if you think about it, the bigger droplets and the variegation in droplet size you get with other misters can come in handy. If you might want that blotchy effect, it might look scary on the Frankenstein or something. So think about different things like that. Here I am. This is just masking off that area. I want to, make it clear that you need to avoid this overspray. And so you come in here with cardstock or whatever else and mask off a larger area, place weights on there, and or whatever else, garbage can, whatever you've got to keep stuff from moving around. Or just make that buffer zone area there with the plastic bigger and wider. So you just want to avoid the overspray. Okay, this is a simple image, but we're going to do something really a little bit more complicated but simple to do with the burst effect on that center. We're going to take our spritzer bottle, again, this little perfume bottle, coming in from, not from directly on top of it, but from the side there a little bit from the bottom, so we don't get droplets right on there. And we're focusing on the center and moving out towards the outside. So we're going to create a gradient effect in the bleaching, and then we're also going to enhance that with some color. And we're going to do all this and then tamp off your excess bleach there off of the stencil, basically, so you don't get that running out and causing sort of a, just an overloaded area that's going to ruin the sharpness of the image as it blurps through. So here you see the effect of doing this gradient effect with the bleach. There's a lot of different gradients you can do, but this is a neat way to do this and create this jack-o'-lantern look. And then we're going to come in with some orange. And this, you could use dye. This is going to be airbrush paint that I'm going to use in the spritzer bottle with a little bit of water mixed with it to thin it in the same spritzer bottle that we use for the bleach. And we're going to do some orange over most of it, and then come back and do some red on the edges, and then come back in the center, in the very center, with some white mixed with a little bit of orange to really highlight the center. And you'll see the effect of this. Very simple. We're not even using an airbrush, but it creates this really neat jack-o'-lantern lit effect. Pretty simple and easy to do. Really neat. Then this is Elvira. I added some vampire teeth to her to make her into a Halloween character here as a vampire. And this is a multi-part stencil, so I can show you what you'll do to do that. Basically, we've got the mouth, the nostrils, the beauty mark there all separate. This whole stencil only took about 20 minutes to cut out. It's really not that bad. And then I'm using part of the inner piece of what would have been the main part of that stencil to get me the alignment and the registration for all those inner parts and get everything in the right place and so forth. Pretty simple process. This way you see and understand how to do a multi-part stencil as well. And this comes out really nice. We mask this off, shoot this, again, with just the spritzer bottle. the mister bottle with some bleach once, dab it off, hit it again, and you've got this. It's really a great piece. Um, this image, the high resolution image of this Elvira vampire piece and Boris Karloff Frankenstein one that I did, and some other of this artwork is going to be for free up on my website, including, like I said, the high resolution large format. So if you have a cutter or a plotter, you can use them for that as well. And it's all going to be for free at chuckbauman.com for Halloween stuff or whatever else you want to do. And this stuff will really come in handy to do a whole bunch of neat Halloween art and scary stuff. And then here's another quick project example where what I did is I masked off this, made a stencil for all of this, including the lettering below and so forth, bleached it down to as pale as I could, then put down white paints and then the colors. And I used an airbrush. This I did for a friend of mine who just loves candy corn. I used an airbrush to do all the coloring and so forth, but again, all of this could be done without an airbrush, including bleaching down the area, the artwork in the stencil, and then colorizing it with fabric paints or dyes or whatever with a brush and so forth. It might look a little bit different, but you could get pretty well close to this without an airbrush. And then another arrow in the quiver of things you can do here are these bleach pens from Clorox. There's a wide end on one end, and this is a gel bleach that'll come out of here. And then there's a narrow end, fine point on the other end. So you want to get it started. You'll get just a little bit of bleach out there first before you get to the cream part. And you want to get this like a toothpaste type of thing out there. And what this is useful for is just quickly drawing some art or writing some stuff and so forth. You'll draw a little spider web kind of thing. And just put this on here and you let it set. And the longer it sets, the more it fades, going to red and then white. And again, always have an insert inside the shirt on any of these projects to keep the bleach from going through to the other side. That's really important. I know I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again here, especially with this. This will sit there for a while, and you can draw all sorts of stuff and do some cool things. You can draw little cartoons, etc., write your name, do all sorts of stuff like that with these pens. So using either the airbrush or the misting bottle, a perfume misting bottle with a light fine spray, you can bleach to different levels all the way down to a fairly light grayish brown level. And you can also colorize or not, depending on what you want to do, and in various ways with variegations and gradients and so forth, and overlay stencils and so forth, using dyes, airbrush paints, acrylics, etc., applied in any number of methods, including by the airbrush, regular paintbrush, sponge, etc. Also, any of these ideas for making and using stencils might easily be applied to painting or using various dyed applications or other fabric paint applications on light colored t-shirts as well, of course. There's just tons of possibilities we can't get to all in one video, but this gives you some great ideas and some neat stuff to start with. And on a piece like this with the Createx paints or a lot of other paints or dyes and so forth, you'll need to heat set them as well. Check for your instructions with your paint on that, how to do that, and so forth. Also, spraying these finished projects with Scotch-Brite helps to preserve them, and hand washing and air drying helps preserve them. Otherwise, they just have a certain number of times they're going to go through a washing machine and a dryer. Be sure to keep the shirt flat on the ground or a table horizontal while doing your bleach applications in order to avoid the gravity from pulling down any bleach and blurting out the bottom of your artwork area. Have something inside the shirt, cardboard or plastic, to absorb or block the bleach or paint or other materials from getting through the other side. Don't leave bleach in the airbrush for any extensive period of time. Be sure to heat set any paints or whatever properly according to manufacturer's instructions, of course. And always hand wash t-shirts like this no matter what. They're going to last a whole lot longer. And just to give you a little comparison, this is a skull I did using the so-called super opaque white airbrush paints, and only that. This wasn't using bleach. This didn't use the silkscreen ink. This was doing it the way you're quote-unquote supposed to. And aside from everything else, a ton of paint. It took a ton of paint to do this, and it doesn't look good. These always look better at a distance. So I just don't recommend that. I recommend using the bleach or the silkscreen ink or something like that. There's got to be a better way to do it than this. And I think our other things that Ronnie and I have done give you a lot of basis to work with. And again, you don't even have to use an airbrush to come up with some really neat art on these black t-shirts. So have fun and happy Halloween.